when I worked, it reminds me, I hear those guys yelling at each other on the boats. It reminds me of when I worked in Alaska when I was in college. There was a place called Ocean Beauty Seafoods out of Cordova. They're a big cannery operation there on Prince William Sound, kind of up by where the Exxon Valdez oil spill was. And this was back in the very early 90s, 1990, 1991-ish. I went there for 2 seasons. And on the cannery line, there were a lot of college kids that did kind of the easy stuff where you just pull the guts out of the fish and wash them off and that kind of stuff. But the guys that did the more skilled labor with the butcher knives were at the front of the slime line, and they would send in these salmon that were, from 8 pounds to 40 pounds. And the first cut, of course, was to take off the head. So you'd want guys up there on the line that were really good with the knife. Otherwise, you damage the meat, you damage the cut, and you don't get as much for it when you go to sell it. Which isn't a big deal if you're sticking it in a can, but if you're selling it fresh frozen, then you want the fish to be in good shape, because a lot of those fish go to big restaurants and stuff where presentation's a big deal. So yeah, the first cut was made by skilled butchers. Most of those guys were from Vietnam and from the Philippines, and some of them were from Laos and Cambodia. I was one of the few white guys at the front of the line, and for me, I'm fairly competitive, so I wanted to learn how to do it and do it quickly and do it well so I could keep up with the best guys on the line. And the guys at the front, most of the foreign guys, didn't know a lot of English, so they only would know a few phrases, and they'd always bellow out. They'd say, "More fish, more fish! Cut fish fast, cut fish fast!" They'd scream and yell, but man, they were fast at it. Yeah, the first cut was taking the head off, and then the next guy on the line was the belly man, and they would take a fillet blade and they'd do the belly cut from the ventral orifice up to the tips, the first set of fins under the head on the body of the fish. And then the next guy in line would scoop the guts out. They would separate the salmon roe, and try and keep it in good shape. And the salmon roe would go to Japan. They would send it to Japan. They'd put it into crates. Morning. They would put the salmon roe into crates and then send it up to the Japanese guys from Tokyo, and they'd put it in these kind of ammo crate sized boxes that were made out of wood, and salt it down and lay it in there. And I think they made more money selling the salmon eggs to the Japanese than they did selling the actual salmon, the fresh frozen salmon. It was big money. Yeah, so I did that for 2 years. The first year, I went up with a couple of my buddies from college. I went up with Ken Hankins, and he and I were buddies from doing music together, playing in bands and stuff down in Southern Oregon at college there. Well, hold on. Ken went up the second year. So the first year, I went up there with a couple of guys from my dormitory. Ben Price, who I've lost contact with, unfortunately. That guy was the best guitar player I've ever known in my life. Man, could he play. Super funny, too. Really funny guy. Went up with Ben and another fellow from our dorm, Pete Pileggi. And I've lost touch with him, too. This was back in 1990. But yeah, our friend Sid, she gave us a ride up to her mom's house up by Salem, Kaiser, and we stayed overnight there. And she was supposed to take us up the balance of the way to Seattle to catch the plane, but something went wrong with her car. So we ended up staying overnight at her folks' house, and then her mom was nice enough to take us to the SeaTac airport, which it's a pretty long drive from the Salem Kaiser area. I guesstimate it was 4 or 5 hours one way. So she took us all the way up there and set us on the plane. And I remember we got to Anchorage at midnight, and we met this chick that was she was going up to Anchorage to be a stripper at one of the strip joints, and she had a boyfriend who went to pick her up at the airport, and she knew we needed a ride into town. We were going to try and stay at a youth hostel until the next day, and then catch a chartered plane to Cordova, because it's the only way into Cordova was by plane or by ship. There's no road there. Anyway, so we got off the plane, and a big storm rolled in, and her boyfriend was nice enough to offer us a ride into town, into Anchorage at midnight. So we all threw our shit in the back of the pickup truck and they gave us a lift to this place called the Dog Patch Hostel. It was in downtown Anchorage. And there was a guy out. I remember we were walking along, and the sun's still out. I'm gonna pause this and resume here in a second. Okay, part two. The sun is still out in Anchorage that time of year. It was early June. It's kind of twilight at midnight in Anchorage in June, as I recall. Anyway, there's this dude outside his hostel feeding the goats. He had goats and stuff down there right in town. And we asked if he had room for us, and he said, yeah, that's fine. It was like $10 a person, I think. 8 or 10. And so that was our first mistake. We brought our gear in and signed in, and he assigned us a bunk, and we slept the night and then got up early. I think we got up at 8 after getting some shut-eye, and he got us a lift to the Anchorage airport again. But before we left, he did something that was very telling. He said, okay boys, let me take a look at your hands, and I can tell you, I'm a fortune teller, I can tell you how each of you guys is going to do working in the canneries up there based upon the condition of your hands. And we thought, okay, well, let's check it out. So he looked at Pete, the guitar player, or at Ben's hands, the guitar player, and he said, oh, I don't know about you, man. I don't know that it's going to pan out for you. And we thought, okay, well, whatever. And then he looked at my hands, and I had calluses, and I worked for the physical plant part of the time in college, so I did a lot of shoveling and manual labor. And he said, you're going to do fine. You're going to do fine because you've got blisters and calluses and stuff already. So you obviously work with your hands. Then he looked at Pete's hands and he said, yeah, you're going to be okay too, I think. But he had the most confidence in mine. So I was happy about that. Anyway, he got us to the airport, and we got on a little plane that was I think it was about a 10-seater twin engine, a prop plane. And this lady gets on board. This is before 9/11, so this lady gets on board, and she's got a case of beer and a rifle. So I remember she gave us each a beer, and this is before they had, the heightened security and all the screening and shit they have now. And then the pilot handed us these bags, and we're like, what the hell? And inside the bags, there was a pair of earplugs, and we thought, okay, we could probably use the earplugs. Hey, there's our kingfishers up here. I got the light right in my face, though. I don't think I can get good shots of them. Maybe if I can go around them, get on the other side of the boat. Yeah, they had a pair of earplugs, which we went ahead and stuffed in our ears, because the plane is loud. And then we had, I said, what's the bag for? And he said, it's so you can puke into it. So we knew we were going to be in for an adventure. It was about probably 35-40 minute flight to Cordova, which had a gravel landing strip. Oh, and we met some really interesting people that first year. I'm trying to think of. That first year we were there, I met a gal named Ginger, and she was awful friendly. She was a really nice gal. And we ended up spending some time together, and she had a tent up at a place called Hippie Cove. Hippie Cove was about a mile away from the cannery, and if you were brave enough to stay at Hippie Cove instead of the cannery dorms, then you could save yourself the $12 a day that the dormitory charged for their facilities and their cafeteria, which, looking back on it, was a screaming deal. But you know, we were young guys, and I wanted to do things my way, so I ended up sharing the tent with her, and we would just eat when we could. Most of our friends would bring us food down from the dormitories. You know, they'd grab extra cake and stuff at lunch and bring it to us in the lunchroom. It wasn't a big deal to do that. The food there was really good. They had the first year they had this Mexican guy who ran the cafeteria, and he made really good food. And there was no shortage of food either. You could eat as much as you wanted. And they had showers at the dorm, and usually the dorms were, you know, it was boys with boys and men, and girls with women and girls. Most of the people were college kids, but there were a few folks that were adults that they'd parse out into individual rooms, and there would be like 5 guys to a room, 4 or 5 guys to a room, and you'd have bunks. And then there'd be a men's bathroom with showers and a gal's bathroom with showers, and they had laundry stuff, facilities you could do a wash if you needed to. Yeah, and then everybody got crabs from the hostel. That was the problem with the hostel. Little did we know. And the crabs came with us to Cordova. And the problem with Cordova is when you get an epidemic like crab lice and we thought we got it from the sheets at the hostel, the sheets on the bunks. It was clean, but you know, probably not sterile, so all the kids got a case of the crabs. And we went to get the medicine there were only 1 or 2 little places in Cordova that would have that kind of thing. I think it was a topical shampoo that kills the bugs. Anyway, of course they sold out. You couldn't get it. So people were, everybody had to resort to just shaving themselves down to nothing. So there was nothing for the lice to grab onto. Everybody looked like adult-sized 8-year-olds. It was kind of freaky. I'd forgotten about that. Oh yes, fine times, good memories. So that was the first season I was up there. I stayed with Ginger in her tent, and then I got a job on the cleanup crew, which was cool because most of the people would work, you know, 14 hours a day and then hang it up. I'm going to start another session here. Hang on. Okay. Most of the people would work about 14-hour shifts. Anything above 8 hours, you'd get overtime, which I think back then, I think they were paying us about $7 an hour standard, and then you get time and a half after 8 hours. So it was possible if you pulled a long shift, you could make some decent money, for a college kid, and your expenses were low, $12 a day if you were staying at the dorm. So, and then on top of that, I was able to get on this cleanup crew gig, so that when the main shift was done, I would help clean the specialized equipment that was used to process the cannery line. And in my case, I ended up doing a machine called it was about a telephone booth size machine that was built in like 1915. It was made out of iron. And this machine takes the pink salmon, those are mostly canning salmon. They're about like yay big. They're a couple pounds. A big one would be like 5 pounds, 6 pounds. And it's an automated assembly line type of thing where people will line the fish all up in a uniform direction and feed them into this giant machine, which has a rotating drum inside of it that grabs a hold of the fish and sends them through this barrage of brushes and blades and water jets, which processes them down to just the carcass, no head, no fins, no guts, and spits them out the other side where they can be cubed up for putting in a can. And my job was to go in after a work shift and clean those. There were 2 of the iron chinks there, and I think each one would take me about 4.5 hours to clean. And you would get intimate with this machine. I mean, you're in there you're wearing your hip waders and rain gear and boots, and you crawl inside this phone booth type machine that's full of knives and brushes and water jets and things with your flashlight, and you get a long toothpick looking thing and some pliers, and you have to clean out every little speck of fish guts from that thing. And then when you're done doing that, you have to blast it clean with a super high pressure water hose. And then after that, you have to sanitize it with a solution that's sprayed out of like one of those pressurized bug killer can backpack things. Yeah, you have to clean it down to the smallest detail, and then after all that, you get a quality assurance guy to come through and check it, and they're meticulous about it, and you have to be because it's for food, Yeah, that was fun. And there are guys there at the cannery that all they do is they keep those ancient machines in operating condition. So if any part breaks, they have to be able to fabricate a new part on site, out of just raw chunks of metal, and their skills, they have to be able to do that. And there were a couple of those guys at the cannery that were fabricators. That was the first year, and then trying to remember, I guess it was around September when things wrapped up, because school was going to start down in Southern Oregon again. So I split and said goodbye to Ginger, and yeah, living at Hippie Cove was a trip. There were some really rough folks up there. Not so bad the first year. There was a lot of beer that was drunk. And there were some real outlaws there. Real outlaws. The second year, things got dangerous up at Hippie Cove. I went back after going to school, in September that first year, and I went to school all year, and then came back up that second season with my friend Ken Hankins. Ken and I were buddies all through college and then after college for years, because we were in the same band together and we played shows all around Portland and whooped it up. Had a wild life. It's a miracle I survived, but I did. Played many shows, many late nights with Ken and Joe and Josh and those guys. Yeah, Ken came up with me that second year because it was good money for us as college kids. And the second year, we were put into a dorm room with a guy named Aaron. And Aaron was probably, he was old enough to be our father. He was about almost 40, I guess, and he was a bad dude. He was dangerous. And before we really got started with work that season, somebody brought a gallon of whiskey to the dorms. And I think Ken and I had a little, and Aaron was with us, and Aaron had said that, you know, don't let him drink, don't let him drink, don't let him drink, because when he drinks, bad stuff happens. And we thought, oh, well, how bad could it be? You know, we're all having a good time. Anyway, somehow Aaron got a hold of that gallon of whiskey, and he drank a lot of it, well over half a gallon. And that man turned into an animal. It was frightening. He, talk about a Jekyll and Hyde. And he got into it. He went up to Hippie Cove. I wasn't staying at Hippie Cove at this point. I was in the dorm with Aaron as my roommate, and we thought, oh, how great, because Aaron's the camp cook this year, so we're going to get, you know, first dibs on all the good stuff in the cafeteria. So Aaron got into the liquor and became very belligerent, and he was a big, strong, tough guy. You wouldn't want to tangle with him, certainly not alone. He's one of those guys that you just know you don't go there with him. It would be a life-ending situation. Anyhow, so that's what happened. He got into the liquor and decided it would be fun to go down to Hippie Cove and raise hell with a couple of the guys at Hippie Cove that were notorious for being dangerous badasses. One of them was named Bonger. Bonger was a Vietnam vet and dangerous alcoholic, drug addict type of guy, little choice material. And push came to shove. The thing that was funny is before Aaron went down to Hippie Cove that day, he started getting into it with me and Ken, and so Ken and I decided it would be a good idea to go for a long walk while Aaron sobered up. And in the course of our walk, I mentioned to Ken that Aaron's the kind of guy that's going to get his balls blown off when he crosses paths with the wrong people, just because he's so out of control, you know. Well, anyway, back to the Hippie Cove. Aaron did cross paths with the wrong guy, and that wrong guy was Bonger, the Vietnam vet. Aaron went into Bonger's, getting some good shots. Oh shit, I had the wrong light. Damn it, I was on an 80th of a second. That's not gonna work out. I thought I was on an 800th. So Aaron went to Hippie Cove and got into a fight with Bonger. He went into Bonger's tent, which was a bad idea, and Bonger had asked him to leave, and Aaron just wouldn't leave. And then he challenged Aaron to a fight. No, I think he tried to throw Aaron out, and Aaron fought him back. Then Bonger had a shotgun. And Bonger shot Aaron. As Aaron was, and he told Aaron he was going to shoot him if he didn't leave. And he did. He shot Aaron in the about at the belt line, the lower belt line, from the, I don't know if he shot him from the front or the back, but the long and short of it is, he blew Aaron's manhood right off. And Aaron, we never saw Aaron again, but he was life flighted to Anchorage that day. Right, right after that, somebody flagged down the local authorities there in Cordova, and Aaron was life flighted to the city. And I don't know whatever happened to him. I'm assuming that he might have been able to survive, but I don't think he would ever be, he wouldn't be a threat anymore to anybody. And how strange it was to know that had happened right after I said that a guy like him needs to get his balls blown off. He gets his balls blown off. Weird, wild stuff.